Welcome back to the David Land podcast. I hate these shows when we have nothing to talk about. But we're going to try to work through with what little we have. An incredible IndyCar race in Texas, which Kyle still hasn't given his thoughts on. We got to preview Long Beach, a big weekend for IMSA and IndyCar. And also, we've got to talk about this NASCAR deal because it's all coming to a head, and it all seems so very familiar to those of us in the open wheel world that it scares me a little bit with the potentiality for a split. But the first thing I want to talk about, it's really important because tragedy struck this weekend in the USAC Sprint Car division. Justin Owen was killed during a time trial single car run at Lawrenceburg Speedway in Indiana. Kyle, I'm going to bring you in. You're the resident sprint car expert. I believe he was the track champion of Lawrenceburg, or at least one of the regular top guys at that track. Tell me a little bit about Justin Owen and the life that he lived prior to his death.
Yeah, like you said, Justin Owen was track champion at Lawrenceburg last year. Won 2 races last year, I believe. Um, he was from Ohio. He was from Southern Ohio, right around where Lawrenceburg is at. So he was one of the Lawrenceburg guys. Um, just a super tragic incident. I believe he had just gotten engaged in December.
Oh, jeez.
Um, just something you never want to see, obviously. Um, we've been fortunate recently where this is the first time this has happened in quite a while, but it always just uh, puts everything into perspective every time something like this happens. But we race on, just like I'm sure Justin Owen would have wanted us to. Tim Clausen had a great quote on Twitter the other day that I retweeted. He said, "We're going to cry tonight. We're going to wake up tomorrow. We're going to question ourselves. But pretty soon we're going to make the first and most important step in recovering from this. We're going to go to the racetrack." So, yeah.
I'm curious because it seems like so many of these accidents that are serious in sprint car racing take place oftentimes when it's single car runs, particularly when a car bicycles and it goes into the wall top side up. This was actually something that came up when I called my family yesterday for Easter. My sister actually asked the question, why don't they have safer barriers on dirt tracks? And I actually didn't have a good answer for that. Is that something, do you think, Kyle, that could prevent accidents like these from taking lives? I mean, because the thing about sprint cars is like the driver's head is protected. Like it's not, you know, it's not like what we've seen in other forms of open wheel racing where a driver's head gets struck because it's not in a cocoon. These are sort of sudden stop accidents when they hit the wall in the wrong space. Is there something that can be done to lessen the possibility of these sort of accidents being as devastating as they have been?
Um, the only dirt track that has had safer barriers, to my knowledge, was the Mansfield Speedway after it got converted back to dirt and it's still, they kept the safer barriers from when NASCAR ran there. And from what I heard, they didn't really like do much because what happens is, and they put like a mesh over top of it, but it just ends up filling up with dirt anyways, even if you
Ah,
all the work you can do, throughout a night, even by the end of one night, even if you clean those suckers out, they're gonna fill up, and it's not gonna do much anyways. I was thinking about this as well, um, and yeah, it just seems like the tracks. You have to remember with dirt racing too is it seems like the tracks that actually have walls are the ones where accidents like this can only really happen. Um, and Lawrenceburg is, if you've seen it, I've been there twice. It's a it's it's pretty much the Bristol.
Yeah, that's exactly the comparison I was gonna make, is that it's a very high banked
Yeah.
track, very high banked, high
It's like
speed.
it's like a smaller Bristol, just Bristol with shorter straightaways, honestly. Um, I actually, when I went there 2 years ago, there was an accident, uh, pretty similar, honestly, in the World of Outlaws race. We were very fortunate that, um, the driver wasn't hurt, when that happened, but, I mean, it's just when the track gets rough like that, it starts rutting, um, it's just I don't know what you can do outside of just start running at tracks maybe that don't have the walls, maybe tracks, at least not at the speed of Lawrenceburg. Um, the one thing to keep in mind too is the wingless cars will act differently. Like if you have a wing on the car, the bicycling doesn't happen as much. But you know, it's just I don't know what else you can do. Um, it's really just the walls and the catch fencing. The tracks that don't have them is where you don't see this, and I just don't know what you can do.
Yeah, it's I mean, that's the problem with Indy cars still. If we kind of go to something that maybe we have more of a
Yeah,
knowledge base on, is the thing is still the biggest safety concern that I personally have with any kind of open wheel racing is the especially like the debris fencing, but particularly the poles. Now, obviously, he didn't hit a pole; he hit the wall. But that's interesting that it's not so much the cars anymore that are the unsafe part of racing. It's what you can hit and how you hit it is more how these sort of things play out these days. And no, it's unfortunate. It's really sad. Anytime we have to talk about these sort of things, um, it's a shame. And like you said, Kyle, maybe this is something you just can't prevent. I mean, we would like auto racing to be totally safe, but at the same time, I mean, these are machines racing at speeds that most people can't even fathom, cornering forces that people, uh, unless you've done it, you cannot understand what these guys do on a daily basis, and really, that's why they're heroes. And so, unfortunately, um, Justin Owen's life was taken, but he'll always be remembered as one of those guys who had the ability and the guts to go out there in a wingless sprint car and lay it on the line. So yeah, just sorry to his family, sorry to the sprint car community, and we'll definitely be thinking about him as the season continues. Just some quick housekeeping as we kind of transition. It's hard to transition from an opening like that. Just from a channel perspective, coming up in the next a couple of weeks, I guess we'll say. Number one, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to make it to Long Beach this year. I've been planning on it, wanted to do it, but as many of you may know, if you have a small business or you are a someone who works for themselves, this is the time when you really do a lot of bookkeeping. And I looked at Long Beach last year, and I looked at how things are currently going with this economy. Long Beach, I think, was my most expensive trip by far last year. Um, and just with the way things are with the economy right now, I don't feel super comfortable taking on that big of an expense. For a trip that's going to be 3 days. I'm still going to do coverage from home. I'm planning on doing hopefully a live post race show. But and it's not that I don't want to go to Long Beach. Trust me. I had such a great time there last year. Talked to so many Southern California fans. I mean, that truly is the Indy 500 West Coast version. It's a great event, and I'm looking forward to coming back there. Um, but I kind of looked at my resources and said, why don't we really throw all the effort and resources into May? Uh, and I hope that you guys will be seeing the fruits of that decision soon, because I think May is going to be awesome. Uh, we're really kind of doubling and tripling down. I think we're going to surprise some people on some of the things that we're doing. Um, Looking forward to it. And obviously, good news is coming up, not this week, but next, is the open test for the Indianapolis 500. Kyle will be coming out, as is Joe. We're going to essentially get the band back together from last year's month of May coverage, and we're going to do our best job for the 2-day April test. An April test, in my opinion, that should be in May. But, that'll be a discussion for another day. Kyle, are you looking forward to, well, I know that's, tell me how
What type of
much you're
question is
looking
that?
forward. I know it's a terrible question. How much are you looking forward to the April test? And are there any storylines going into it that you're kind of have got your mindset on?
Well, obviously, I'm looking forward to it tremendously. I'm so excited. Honestly, we keep saying both of us are in agreement that this should be in May. This should be
Yep.
like the open. This is basically opening day, but it's in April.
And
But I,
behind closed doors, which doesn't make any sense to me. I
but
mean,
I
it's not
like,
behind closed doors, but it is behind closed doors. It's
but
weird.
I've been thinking about it, and I like there being a test in April. Period. It's like our preseason testing. It's like baseball has their. They go over to. I mean, they do get to go to like freaking Arizona and California and be in the warmth, but this is our like spring training.
Yeah.
Even though they already had whatever.
Well, they
But
did, but they didn't. It's we're not talking about the thermal club
this is
anymore.
this is what matters. It's Indy 500 testing. This is the only thing that matters. But we get to go. We get to go for 2 days. We get to get that May feeling back. Then we get to go home for like 3 weeks and
That's what I
want that
can't
again.
stand. That's what I can't stand. Here's what I would do. I can't believe we're talking about this, but I guess we're going to talk about this. Here's what I would
Might
do.
as well. Win and run.
Might as well. Um, why are the barber like I would switch barber and the Indy test? Like it just seems so logical. I do not understand why they don't do that. Like
I think
actually what I would do. That hear me out. Hear me out because I know you're listening, so just hear me out on this one. Uh the first week of May, GP, because you have a better chance of having the weather be bad. So it'll be a more exciting race. Second week, you take those 2 April test days. Now, if Firestone needs to do a test, you don't need 32 cars for that. Like, just have 6 cars do an April test and fine, whatever. Open the track on Thursday. Do their ROP, rookie orientation. If people want to go out there and shake the cars down, fine. Have Fast Friday. I'm only asking for at one extra day of May, by the way, if we're while we're saying this. Have Pole Day. Do the Fast 12 as its own thing. Have a pole sitter crowned 3 days into May on the GP week, right before Mother's Day, and then have your typical practice qualifying, then have bump day on the next weekend so that you have a full month again. You can promote the pole sitter and bump day separately because I think that's a big thing that we're probably going to run into this year where the pole sitter and the bump day is going to happen on the same time. And we're going to have to you could spread this content out is what I'm saying. Yeah, that's what I would do. That's what I would do. So you wouldn't have you would have a full month, but it wouldn't be as much track time as the old full month used to. But I think I question why we're doing this test in April, essentially behind closed doors, but not really because they're going to let everybody in turn 2 and they're going to open up a concession stand. I don't know. It would be good for the bronze badge people to have an extra couple days, and I think it would be good for the promotion of the 500 to have the pole sitter crowned 2 weeks before the 500, like the old days, and not at the same time that we're talking about bump day at the same time. That's my opinion. That's just I threw that out there.
plus,
And
think about this: if you do pole day the first weekend, then you have that week of practice.
right,
If you're
all that
out,
drama, all
yeah.
that drama.
If you're about to, that's a week one. That's a week buildup on talking about who's gonna get bumped because we know what the speeds are at that point, so we have more to talk about that week. 2, there's kind of the thing right now where it's like, these guys get 1 day on Fast Friday to shake their qualifying card. Oh, if you're gonna get bumped, you kind of screwed on track time, right? Well, you're giving them pole day to figure that stuff out. You're giving that first weekend and the few days leading up, and then you have an extra week for those guys on the chopping block to figure it out. You're giving them an extra week.
Mm-hmm.
So then, guess what's going to happen on bump day? It's the competition is going to be even tighter because guess what? They had a whole week to prepare now on what they knew what they had the first weekend.
And also none of that dopey last row shootout crap.
Yeah.
I'm talking
Nobody likes that.
Everybody. It's a free for all. If you qualified, I would even now see. Now this is where I'm a super purist. If you're in that fast 12 and you went slow, you should be on the chopping block too. If the pole sitter was too slow, he gets bumped. I don't care at this point. That would be awesome. But that's just what I'm saying. I wasn't expecting to go on that rant today, but I just felt the need. It came to me. It's been on my mind forever. And honestly, here's the other thing too about the month of May and IndyCar. Like, we just got to accept that the only time IndyCar has mainstream, attention is during May. So my presentation to the world is, why would you limit that? Why would you intentionally cram all that content into as short a time period as you can? My opinion would be, you stretch that out and stretch out your grasp on the motorsport world. That's how I feel about it. But
I
I'm
had
sure others feel differently about it.
I had a perfect little example in my head this weekend. Did you know the Masters was happening last weekend?
I did,
Like,
but I didn't care.
When did you find out the Masters was happening last week?
I feel like I follow enough, like, not like actual golf people, but enough kind of older gentlemen that care about the Masters. I saw the picture of like the people with the green jackets,
Yeah.
eating their little dinner. But I mean,
So that was probably, let's just give or take, that was probably a week before the Masters. I was
yes,
thinking about this. I was like, well, the Masters is one of those events in America that is a big deal, kind of like the Indy 500, right? I am not personally, I just went golfing for the last 2 days. So I would like to be a golf guy, obviously, but I just went for the first time the last 2 days.
okay.
But anyways, I'm probably in the demographic that you know that they would want, right? 21, just starting out in golf, would that I'm in their but I don't know a lot about golf, so I'm in their demographic. I didn't know the Masters was happening until like 4 days before, and I thought about it. I was like, why? It's a big, like, the Masters is a big thing. Why did it take me this long to figure out that it was this weekend? I was like, well, you know what the Indy 500 does a good job at is because even though it's shorter than it used to be, it's 2 weeks. That's why we want more things in May, is because guess what? You have product there on
Mhm.
track. Imagine a month before the Masters if you had guys out there golfing for something. Doesn't have to be the whole shebang, but imagine if they were golfing in the Masters 2-3 weeks before the Masters happening. More people are gonna know the Masters is on that weekend
Well,
because you
it's
have
like the
50 weeks.
NFL playoff theory too. Like the playoffs all lead up to the Super
Yeah,
Bowl,
yeah.
and for like the Indy 500, like or the NCAA tournament, like that would be like here's my example, is like the Indy 500 cutting practice days or trying to smash everything into 2 weeks. That's like cutting the field in the NCAA tournament to like 32 teams versus 64. It's like, why on earth would you do that? You know,
Mhm.
um, and you're going to see the football tournament expand. It's not getting smaller. They're adding teams to it. That means it's going to take longer. That means there's more buildup, and hopefully that means it's going to be that there's more people tuning in for that, more people interested in it. And you're right. The Masters is something that, although I'm not a person who follows golf all that much, I haven't played in a while. I'd like to try to play again. Maybe we should do that in May. We'll do the Brickyard Crossing. But I knew the Masters was happening because there were so many people talking about it and so many people excited about it. And I think this goes back to the discussion we had about Formula One a couple of weeks ago. Is that um, the United States and its sports market is all about big events. And so when you have one, and you have one that has mainstream appeal, like the Indianapolis 500, you should monetize the ever loving hell out of that, as far as I'm concerned. And I get that the industry, because I know there's some drivers who would I think prefer that the Indy 500 was like one weekend. Um, but like I, I I am completely the opposite opinion that like the attention that Barber is going to get versus the attention that an Indy 500 practice day is going to get is like completely different. Or even qualifying, or like like the Fast 12 shootout. There are going to be more people talking about that than your typical IndyCar race. So I I think it's worth the sport looking at it, because it worked in the past, and not everything that worked in the past works now. But I think in the era of content is king, having more content rather than less content, especially based around your biggest race, makes a lot of sense. That's all I'm saying.
Absolutely. I think it's worth making the point to people as well, kind of like what I was saying with the Masters. Is I look at myself as I am the person to golf to what IndyCar should be looking to marketing towards. I'm a person who I don't know a lot about golf. I know a little bit, not a lot. Would I watch golf? Would I have watched the Masters if I knew it was happening before it was actually happening? Yes. So when you're looking at marketing, those are the people you want to look towards. People, my age, younger, know a little bit, not a lot. But the sooner you get that to them, the sooner you have product, the more time you have. I don't know. It all makes sense. I just look at things like that, like the Masters. Do you ever do that? You ever think of a sport that you're not really interested in? It's like, I'm the perfect demographic that they are looking towards.
Um, Maybe not perfect demographic, but I think I made this point about women's basketball. The
Yes.
the NCAA tournament, where you had because like the joke always is, oh, IndyCar's got the same ratings as WNBA. Well, these girls that are getting all the attention in the college basketball, they're going to be in the WNBA here in a couple years,
Mm-hmm.
and they're going to be playing in the WNBA, and 9 million people watch the NCAA tournament, the women's final, where these girls are all like doing the John Cena thing at each
Mm-hmm.
other, and it's like, oh, like that's probably gonna be the hot sport, like WNBA. So like if you're gonna say that the WNBA can like be on coming on the rise, because I would have never believed that. I would have put that in the same category as Formula One having some kind of a foothold in the U.S. I would have been like, nah, it's not gonna happen. It's possible, man. Any of this is possible. I mean, all it takes is the right spark at the right time and the right people talking about it. Speaking of things that people are talking about, Texas IndyCar. Um, I think people pretty much know what I felt about it. Kyle, I'll let you kind of lead off and just kind of lead the discussion on Texas. What do we need to talk about still from this one?
I'm glad. Okay. I watched all the content. I watched all of your content. Luke did a great job.
Yeah,
Salute
yeah. Luke
as
is
usual.
yeah.
Uh, Honestly, the thing that surprised me most out of your content that I
Mm.
thought was the most intriguing was the the I think it was Friday when specifically when Rena said we want pack racing. What was your kind of take on that?
I I don't know. I think Renus. So it could have been a joke.
Mm-hmm.
You can never quite tell with Renus. I will say that.
Ferrucci wanted it as well. Now I think back, it was Ferrucci and VK. Also, how the okay, many questions.
Okay.
Why why did you have Santino and VK together? They're not on the
Because
same team. I
uh,
had questions about that at first. I was like, well, this is funny.
it
I'm
was
not
funny.
complaining, but like this
No,
is
it,
interesting.
it was funny. It was mainly because they were kind of talking together, and it was kind of wrapping up. I mean, this was right at the end of the bullpen, and they kind of looked at me and said, do you want us?" I was like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Do you want us together, separate?" I'm like, "Oh, dude, we're going together." Like, And they agreed with that because they're like, oh yeah, we get to wrap this up quicker anyway. So like they get out of there easier. And I'm like, I don't think I've ever seen, like you said, like, I'm sure you did watching it. I'm like, I don't think I've ever seen these two drivers interact
Yeah,
together before. So like it
yeah.
was just kind of going to be funny or interesting to see
It's a
them
breath of
talk.
fresh air. You don't get this like usually. Like I'm not complaining because they're the funniest duo ever, but like if I saw McLaughlin and Newgarden together, I'd be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I've seen
Right.
that. Yeah. But like those two together is like, oh, that's a breath of fresh air. That's pretty neat.
Yeah, and they both have an interesting perspective. It was kind of funny that it's like one of the tallest drivers and one of the shortest drivers, so we did have some trouble getting them both in the frame. But then Luke did a great job of getting them both in the frame. But um, to the pack racing point, uh, if he was serious, Renus, he said why. It's because Ed has the experience with pack racing.
Hmm.
And I think if we look deeper, the Ed Carpenter cars were way off, right? So, although Renus, and I should have given him more credit, I realized this later because I kind of glossed over him to wax poetic about Augustine. But like Renus had made up, I think, the most positions out of anybody. I think he finished 11th and he started like 25th or maybe
He's
even further back
the
than that.
best out of the Ed Carpenter cars for sure.
Yes, but Ed was 13th. Ed was right there behind him. Um, so while I think they had a good day, I think they would have benefited from having it be a pack race where they could just kind of hang on to the back of the field and then just benefit from the chaos. If that was a serious answer, I think it was a combination of the Ed's experience with that and Ed's talent at that, and the fact that they were off a little bit from a mechanical grip standpoint, and they wanted some help. And help is the whole pack being together and not being able to get away from one another, which did not happen. And I was very pleased to see that.
Yeah, well, it just from that, which I mean, you're right. It could have been a joke, could have been just based on Ed's experience. But this throughout the weekend, kind of the theme of the way I think fans started talking, the way the way I kind of saw things going from afar. Um, do you think that possibly we could be looking at pack racing with rose tinted shades on, like looking back at the past? Because
Oh,
obviously this wasn't a pack race, but it's I honestly I didn't even think about it while the race was happening, but after the fact, I was like, this is probably the closest we've gotten to a pack race since probably Texas 2016 or 17.
yeah, yes. I
And
the
like the other thing, sorry, but
Oh no, you're good.
the other thing that I realized with that was like there's a whole crop of drivers now. And that's why I was intrigued that VK said that. Is there since 2017, like there's a whole crop, like half the field pretty much are drivers that have never driven in a field like that tight together, you know?
Yes. The key difference between what we saw at Texas and the pack race, because I was pleasantly surprised, not pleasantly surprised, but I'm glad they did it. IndyCar uploaded right after Texas the 2009 Chicagoland race. And if you want to see the difference between what a pack race is and what Texas was, watch that 2009 Chicago race, because none of the cars could get away from each other. And the key point was not just the fact that they were all packed together. Like there were cars running in the pack that really, like, this is what the difference between like me and maybe some different fans, have an opinion on oval racing. For me, you can either have, like, this is the thing with oval racing, right? You can have one of two things. You can have all the cars on the lead lap, or you can have passing, but you cannot have both. You're either, because if you have all the cars on the lead lap, you're going to get one of two things. You're going to get a single car line or a single file line, or you're going to get three or four lines that aren't going anywhere. But with Texas, yeah, and I can't shut up, crybabies, if you were crying about there being only two cars on the lead lap at one point, because you saw more passing, car on car passing in that Texas race. Real passing, by the way, not just that crap they always count when the guys are coming down the pit lane and every car that goes by it is a pass. This was real, legitimate passing, wheel to wheel racing. Once you started a pass, once you initiated a pass, you could complete it. yes, you're right, Kyle. There was a lot of that side by side, kind of IRL style, like when they have the camera pointed to the side and the car's kind of coming back and going
Yep.
back, but a lap or two past that point of running side by side, like let's say Joseph, the winning pass Joseph made on Pelot, yeah, they ran side by side for a bit, but once Joseph got around him, sayonara. Nobody was passing him. No, maybe Pato would have, but like Pelot wasn't coming back. And in the pack racing days, like
He wouldn't have
Pelot,
gotten away.
Award, yeah, exactly. They would have been running three wide the whole and some people like that, but it goes back to my whole acceptable risk deal.
Hmm.
Watching that 2009 Chicagoland race, you're going, oh my god, like someone is going to get catapulted into the third row of the grandstand watching this, because there's nowhere to go. Your moves don't matter. Graham makes a move at the end of that 2009 Chicago race that should have won him the race. He gets this huge run on Briscoe and Dixon. He pulls to the outside, and the only thing it does is suck Dixon away, sucks Dixon and Rahal back so that Briscoe runs away by himself. And if he had made that move at Texas in today's Indy cars, he would have initiated that pass with that run and completed it going into turn number one. And that's the difference for me with Texas, and why that racing was so damned good is because they actually could pass. They could pass each other. They could pass the lap cars. If you had a good car, you could get away. God, I hope the Indy 500 is like that. And I don't care if 5 cars finish on the lead lap, because if I get the show that I got at Texas for the Indy 500, I will be a happy man. Thank you. Good night.
Yeah, I totally agree. It was just that whole weekend, the way it was playing out. I heard pack racing mentioned more times than I have in years.
Yes.
Years. And I remember the days, like right after 2015 Fontana, where the noise was super loud about it.
Yeah.
The only thing that I am kind of sad about is that I never saw a Will Power interview after Texas, because I thought about that as well. I was like, he probably would have been the perfect quote.
I thought about it. I saw him. The reason I didn't do it, I could have maybe tried. But I do know that Will can be a strange bird sometimes, and I try to have good relationships with the drivers. And the last thing I want to do, because I knew the exact thing that you were thinking, right? Oh man, Will would be a great quote. Did Will think this was too much, right? But Will Power had a terrible day. His
Yeah.
car was wicked the entire time. I kind of just thought to myself, Will had a miserable day. The last thing he wants to do is have a purple mic shoved in his face. So I erred on the side of let's keep a good relationship with Will. Now, would he have talked to me? Maybe. But and that was the thing. Like Pagano was not happy about his day. But I have a closer relationship with Pagano. It's not that I don't have a close relationship or a good relationship with Will, but it's easier for me to like go to a guy like Pagano and be like, "Hey, do you want to talk?" Versus Will that I just don't know that well yet. To feel like, oh, I'm just going to step right in here and talk to this guy, right? There are some drivers in the field that I'm cautious around because I don't know them that well yet, and there's other guys that I can really kind of push the envelope, so to speak, with. Um, I'd like to get to that point with all the drivers where I can push the envelope and make sure that I'm not ruining any future, opportunities to talk to them. But you're right. I mean, that was probably a missed opportunity for me. But at the same time, I want to respect that the fact that I know that Will is probably more antsy after a race like that than other drivers. So you don't want to put him in a bad spot either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Will's just a guy that, I mean, not only would it have been interesting, just out of sake of, oh yeah, Will Power's a good quote, but like he is a guy that's been around long enough that I think would have probably a good take, like a good opinion on what that was that we saw.
And he
Honestly,
did actually. I mean, someone got the quote. I retweeted it. Someone did talk to him because he said something to the effect of essentially like they got it right.
okay.
He was like, it wasn't pack racing, but we could actually race. So he's like, we probably right on the edge of where we needed to be.
Yeah, I might have seen that. Because yeah, I mean, it did kind of feel like it wasn't a pack race, right? Like people get away. At one point, there were 2 cars in the lead lap. I mean, if you had a good, like all the guys with the good cars were at the front, and that's
Yeah.
all you can ask for on an oval race like this, honestly.
That's
Because
what I said. It's like the old Michigan 500s that Cart
yeah,
used to run. It was
yeah,
exact. I mean, that was exactly the race we watched.
like if it was a pack race, then Graham Rahal would have been top 5 because he
Yeah.
had a terrible car. If it was a pack
Yeah.
race, oh, he would have been fine because everybody would have been. But I mean, it we are walking on that tightrope though, because if it got any more crazier than it was at Texas, then we're looking at something potentially dangerous. The other point on this race that I wanted to mention that I believe you mentioned as well in your video was
Mm,
thank the Lord that Graham Rahal stayed on the ground. That was
preach it.
a huge, huge testament. Like I can't even explain how huge that is that happened the way it did because he ran straight square in the back of him.
Hmm.
And any other time that would have been like thankfully that we saw the aftermath and Graham out of the car before we saw the replay. Because if we had been on Graham's onboard
Yeah.
live when that happened, I probably would have like just dropped dead immediately of a heart attack. Like when I saw I think my heart skipped a beat when I saw the replay afterwards. Like that just looked gnarly, and the way the car stayed on the ground, I think it was uh the holes in the floor. I think that had a huge part of it.
Mhm.
I think, you know, huge shout out, applause to IndyCar at, you know, all those years of hard work on keeping these cars in the ground. Oh my gosh, they did it. They
Yep.
did it. That was awesome.
I
Unfortunate
think.
for Graham and Devlin, but that was awesome. That
Well,
was awesome to see that.
Texas was a great showcase that the IndyCar technical committee got a lot of things right on that race. And they got the aero package right. They got the aerodynamics. They got the ability for the cars to not fly like we saw with Graham Rahal. Now, I think that I do think it was lucky. My suspicion is I'd have to look at the data. I've not seen the data. But uh, I suspect Graham had already slowed down quite a bit, and Devlin obviously was running at a slower speed too. Um, so I think it was, he got lucky that it didn't take off for sure. I think there is a chance that wreck probably still ends up with him in the fence. If a couple of different things didn't, take place the way that they did. But like you said, I did not see it live. I saw them kind of in the wall in 4, and I kind of thought it was the same deal as last year where they got together going into the corner and both ended up in the wall. And when you see the replay on Big Hoss, you go, "Oh my gosh!" Like, wow, what a bullet dodge that was.
The
Um,
onboard was insane. Just looking
oh yeah,
pretty
well
much up at the sky like that,
that's
terrifying.
like the Dario or any of those onboards from the Vegas crash. I mean, that's exactly what went back to my mind.
Yeah.
And in fact, we've seen that now both races in a row where a car has gone over the back of another one and
Yeah.
really didn't fly. If you think about it,
Yeah.
Kirkwood's car at St. Pete got right back on the ground when it got over the back of Jack Harvey, I believe it
Mhm.
was at St. Pete. So yeah, I think that was good. I think the only thing that I was curious about, and I think they that it's been I don't want to say an issue for a while, but it's something I've observed is that in the case of Devlin and in the case of Stingray Rob's accident, when the cars get into the wall, they do the Jay Howard thing
Mhm.
where eventually the suspension folds over and the car like shoots to the inside. I wonder if the floor being as wide as it is currently prevents initial hits from breaking suspensions that otherwise in the past would have. Now they break them, but they don't like fold them in immediately.
Mm.
And so they start rolling down the hill. Because I wonder about that sometimes. So again, I'm not a technical guy. I don't work for Delara. I never will work for Delara, unfortunately. But I'd be curious if there's something to that
That's a good point.
because because that's the scary part is like when you see Stingray shoot across the track in front of a bunch of cars or Devlin shoot back up the track, not in control of his car anymore, or with Jay Howard, same thing. And that was the ultimate case of that going as about as badly as it possibly could have. I wonder if there's something that could be done about those kind of glancing blows to either make the suspension break or maybe make it not break. So, because I think we're in the sweet spot of that suspension lasting just long enough to cause trouble,
Hmm.
I guess, so to speak. But again, I think for all the guff we give them, I think IndyCar got a much needed W at Texas. I think
Yep.
that weekend could not have gone better for IndyCar. Like I said, what a great showcase for the sport. I think the only disappointing thing is that's the only time we're going to see a race like that this year. I mean, Iowa's probably going to be kind of similar to it. Um, we'll see with Indianapolis with the changes. I mean, I have no reason to doubt them at this point. So I think maybe Indianapolis will be more like that. I hope it is.
I'm.
And Gateway with the alternate tires, we could be in it for a great season of oval racing.
I mean, I'm gonna say it all month in May, but I mean, if the added downforce and if the temperature's cool on May 28th, it's gonna be a good race. If it's hot, I don't know. I don't know about that, but
Well,
if it's cool,
I mean, temperatures obviously affect the cars a lot, and they seem to affect the DW12 more than I've ever seen
yeah,
another chassis.
especially with
Um,
this aero kit.
well, yeah, but even in like the initial phase, you look at the 2013
Hmm.
500 versus the 2014 500. It's night and day. I mean, yeah, there was a lot of lead changes in both, but like the complexion of the race was completely different. I mean, it was really dominated. The 2014 500 was, there was 5 or 6 guys who dominated it the whole time, and
It's pretty much
2013 you had,
caution free.
yeah, that was weird too. And you would think a hot day would encourage
Hmm.
more accidents than less. Um, what's funny is I was talking with a friend of mine the other day about the adding of aerodynamics, because I always kind of was under the impression that adding downforce would make the field get closer. But at Texas, it seemed like the opposite. They added downforce and the cars spread out. So I wonder at the Indy 500, because they're adding a lot more downforce, like a lot more down. Like they can crank. I think they're specifically doing a new rear wing mounting point. I have to look at it. I'm sorry I don't have this like look brought up right now.
Wait, I actually didn't know about this. More than Texas?
Oh yeah, they can crank like 9 degrees more into the rear wing than
Oh,
previously.
this might be
Um,
huge.
yeah, but uh, but for those of you thinking that it's going to be a DW12 like 2013 500, my suspicion is it's probably going to go the opposite direction, because I think what we saw at Texas was that, and again, I'd have to, I have to ask the crews. I didn't get to ask the crews, but I think the big difference was that some guys could run lighter downforce than other ones, or some guys could dial in their setups better than other ones because there were more options, and therefore Pato and Joseph could make that aero package work. They were gone, and so at the Indy 500, and we even saw it kind of at the end of the Indy 500 last year with Ericsson. Like he was gone. Like there was going to be no
Yeah.
leapfrogging if that goes to the end. He was gone. Um, we might see that through the whole race, because I think part of the reason they do all that fuel saving as much as they do now and run around in a line is because they know even if they run hard, they're not going to get away from the rest of the field. Well, what's to say that this year the difference between a fast car and a slow car, where in the past it was like 3 miles an hour, let's say it's 6, 7, 8, and Scott Dixon can put a lap on, you know, the bottom 10 cars in the first fuel stint. I don't know. I think that would be okay. I would be okay with that, because here's the thing with the Indy 500. I don't want to be negative. I don't mean to be negative. And I have liked the Indy 500s of the last few years, but the most exciting parts, for the most part, of the Indy 500 before the last 20 laps, when everybody actually races, um, races hard, I mean, um, are the in and out laps, because that's when people actually go hard. Once they all sort out and get in the line, nobody moves or tries to make a pass for the whole rest of the time. And if they catch the back of the field, it's really, really hard to lap cars. So hopefully this new aero package that they're bringing to the Indy 500 will mean that it's easier to set up and make passes on lap cars, lead lap cars. Fast cars can go to the front. Cars that are falling off can fall backwards. That's what I'm hoping for. I like I said before, if they could put on a similar type of show that they did at Texas, I would be so happy for this year's Indy 500, because Texas was a Romain Grosjean crash and the elimination of that dumb wave around rule that's worse than the lucky dog away from being a 10 out of 10 IndyCar race for me.
Yeah.
It was that good.
I have a poll for the chat and for the people who listen to this podcast in their car or listen to podcasts in general. I do that. You ever been listening to well, David probably hasn't, but I just be listening to podcasts in my car and I'll just hear something and I'll say something out loud that I disagree with. But I have a poll for those people in the car and for the people in the chat. Would you rather see the DW12 aero kit, like the initial 12, 13, 14 type of racing, or even in the aero kit era where, when we had the manufacturer kits where it was, slipstream and go pretty much, mini lead changes? Or would you rather see, probably the best example of this aero kit currently, like 2021, where it was just a dual, but it was more if you had the best car. The car mattered in the DW12 aero kit era, obviously, but I would feel like a little bit less. It was more of everybody running in a snake pattern, and then if you were in the top two, you could pass for the lead. You just traded back and forth lap to lap, and then it was a crapshoot. You put yourself in the best spot for the final 10 laps. Would you rather see that racing? Because I've heard a lot of people really into that stuff, and then I would consider myself more in the 2021 crowd. If I could choose between the slipstream stuff or 2021, I'm 2021.
I really like the 2021 race. I will say this too. The point I have against the 2013 style of racing, it's not that it wasn't exciting and it's not that it wasn't entertaining, but having been there, and I think there were less people at that Indy 500 than there ever have. I mean, I've never seen the stands for an Indy 500, but the people stopped cheering the lead changes in 2013. Like, the crowd stopped cheering the lead changes. I've never seen that happen at the Indy 500 before. There were so many lead changes that people stopped cheering, and I think that's when there's too much. The other thing I would say is, with the 2013 Indy 500, you exponentially increase the possibility of an EJ Viso Indy 500 win. And nothing against EJ, but how do you promote that? Like I've said, I think we've kind of talked about this before. What happens if there's a wacky fuel mileage winner at the Indy 500 and it's someone who's not in contention the entire day, but they just managed to stick on the back of the snake in 20th place and just go one lap further than Scott Dixon does on fuel?
Well, then you're jumping off the grandstands, I guess.
I'm definitely jumping off the grandstands for that.
Well, now that you said that, EJ Viso is probably going to come back and he's definitely winning the Indy 500.
Listen, if that gets us 35 cars, I'm all for it. I'm all for it. You know what, EJ, come back. I'll kiss you like Andy Granatelli if you win the 500 if you give us 35 cars and then win it. Okay. I think we've talked enough about Indy cars.
What's the chat saying? Is the chat saying?
Oh, the chat is actually a little bit. They seem a bit confuzzled. There's some talk about. It seems like people seem to maybe prefer 2021, but mainly it's just a tough call. I mean, you're just talking about a very different style of racing. But I think a lot of people were high on 2021 just because you can't recreate 2021 again. You can't recreate the fact that everybody could, well, not everybody, but most people couldn't go to the 500 in 2021 or 2020.
Yeah. Well, I'm not really talking about the circumstances. I'm talking about the type of racing.
Well, but I think people are going to be nostalgic for it just because.
I shouldn't have said 2021. Should have said 2022 or something. But I mean, cool temperatures. This aero kit, you can race. Best car wins. Best car and driver.
I think anytime the best car and best driver wins, it's the right package. That's how I feel about it. I think the package is wrong when that doesn't happen. Speaking of, absolutely no segue to be had there, but NASCAR. Um, I'll just say it. There's a better than zero chance that NASCAR is about to finally gut the golden goose. Because this whole revenue sharing charter battle that NASCAR and the teams are having, I think is reaching critical mass very quickly. Kyle, have you been? I mean, I've obviously given some of my thoughts on this already. As an outside observer, where do you see this going from the NASCAR and teams having a conflict? Because the big story recently, I guess to recap for those of you who didn't pay attention to videos, was that the teams boycotted a regularly scheduled meeting with NASCAR. They brought this conflict, which has been going on behind the scenes, into the public eye in a very public way. And Jim France has specifically said that he doesn't really want the charter system to continue. Although it would seem that the teams are going to get, or NASCAR is willing to concede a bigger portion, a bigger percentage of the TV money to the NASCAR teams, that may come at the cost of the charters, which the teams may not be willing to give up. So I think this might be untenable. What do you think, Kyle?
Well, I think my best analysis on this that I'll tell you is I'm like I paid attention to it, but I'm kind of on the outside. I'm not as opinionated on it as you, and I'm also not going to use any big words. I'm gonna
Uh-oh.
what I'm about to do is I'm about to lay this out very
No big words.
no big words. I'm gonna lay this out very simply. All right. It's very interesting that they went public with this. That's very interesting. But what's gonna happen is, I mean, so you have the charter system, right?
Mhm.
The NASCAR teams, the team owners, without the charter system, what do they have? Nothing.
They have a couple of spec cars.
Yeah, they have a couple of race cars in a shop. They have a shop, a couple of race cars, tools, things like that. So with their charter, they have did they have to pay NASCAR for the charter?
I can't
Like initially
remember.
off the bat, did they have to pay for the charter?
I think they might have. I think there
Or
was
was there,
some.
because I know I'm like they initially got the charter, I think. I think they got it based off points, no?
No, no, no. That's all about the race team alliance, the charters. It's whoever was a part of that. So I don't remember if they did pay for that. I think they did. I think you're right on that one. I'm sure the chat will tell us. But certainly the charters have monetary value.
Yes.
I think
Like
is
Dale
the key
Jr.,
point. Yeah.
for example, Dale Jr. I'm Dale Jr. I wish I was Dale Jr. He wants to have a Cup Series team. He has the infrastructure to do it, I'm sure. Sure
He's got the money to do it.
has the capital. Would that technically be using a big word? Darn.
Yeah, that was a big word.
Well, he has to pay, which he definitely has the money to do it, but why would you want to pay what, upwards of $10 million for a charter just to be guaranteed into the show each week? So guess what the race teams have? They have more than a car and a shop, tools, transporter, stuff like that. They have a charter that they can, if they have to sell off their team, worst comes to worst, that's an immediate $10-20 million to sell to a aspiring team owner that wants to join the series. NASCAR, Jim France, I don't know exactly why he's not sold on the charter system. I'm not a big fan of the charter system. I don't like having guaranteed entries into races, period. Like at all. I think it's stupid. But I see where it makes sense business wise, because if the team needs to sell out, okay, I'm Chip Ganassi. Guess what I have now guess what I had then that I didn't have a couple years before. I didn't have $10 million just sitting there that I could sell.
Chip Ganassi is going to end up looking really. No matter what happens, Chip Ganassi
Yeah.
selling when he did is going to look so smart at the end of this.
But to finish laying this out, if NASCAR gets, which this is why the teams boycott it, because it's never going to happen, because the teams are never going to give this up. guess if they got rid of the charter system, guess what? The teams just poof, $10 million out of it. And by the way, Justin Marks, Denny Hamlin, these new teams that came in, they've already bought charters. They've had to come in and buy charters from other teams. So they've already spent the $10 million. So to my question earlier on whether or not you paid in the beginning for a charter, they definitely didn't pay the money that Denny Hamlin and Justin Marks paid. If they paid money, they paid a very, very much lower rate than what
The
the
chat is
charters are
saying
worth.
$2 million up front for each charter.
Look at that, $2 million investment. You could sell it for 10 to 20 right now. That's how much they are worth right now.
Or maybe more, depending on who's bidding for them.
Yeah. The price for charters right now are insane. And yeah, if the NASCAR got rid of this, what do the teams have? They have a shop, some cars. So big whoop. You're not gonna get the money you're gonna get for a charter for all those things. I mean, definitely not enough to want to come in and own a team. The problem with the charters is, and I'm sure this is why Jim France is not really a huge fan of them, is it doesn't really encourage teams into coming in, because it's kind of like F1 where it's like you have your set number of slots and anything outside of that, it's not really worth it. Like for an open team to come show up without a charter, you're not really making anything back. Like there's nothing really to gain unless it's the Daytona 500. There's nothing at all to gain. So if you want to continue to grow the amount of teams and the amount of cars, ideally you don't have charters and you just pay out through the field more. But the teams that already have charters, it's kind of like we had a conversation with a team owner last year, David, when it came to sports cars, where it was like, hey, if you give them the problem with giving them DPI and having the base LMP2 chassis that the manufacturers don't have to spend this much money on, is now you've gotten them to the point where they're spending less money. So are they ever going to spend more money again?
Right.
No.
Right.
No. The NASCAR team, now the teams in NASCAR have this, $10, $20 million thing in their hands. Are they ever going to give it up? No, because you've already shown them that they have this thing that they can make a lot of money on. So they're never going to give it up.
Yeah, you're right. And that's the big sticking point, is that even if NASCAR, their teams get more of a percentage from the series. So there's two problems with that, right? there's some serious problems that are going to have to be addressed here. So let's say NASCAR's like the line that they will not cross is that the charters will stay around. They want to get rid of the charters. NASCAR wants to get rid of the charters. Will the teams be made whole for that, $2 million investment that is now being a $20 million or valued at $20 million for those who want to buy it? Now, here's the thing. If the market was suddenly flooded by charters, they would not be worth $20 million. They're only worth $20 million if someone's willing to pay $20 million for that. And I think that's what maybe NASCAR's point is about the charters. I bet you NASCAR is saying, hey, in this new deal, we are going to pay you this much more of a percentage of our TV money. You're getting a good deal, Sonny. But the teams, like you say, have these dollar signs in their eyes and say, well, we got this $20 million thing. Why would we get rid of it? And I think the teams are correct that they are sitting there thinking, correctly so, by the way, I think, and I've said this for a while, is that the current TV deal that NASCAR signed in 2014 for the start of the 2015 season is somewhere around $500 million per network. So NBC pays $500 million. Fox pays $500 million. That is more or less $1 billion per year. $1 billion per year in TV money to NASCAR.
That's just
Again,
TV money.
I always point out, IndyCar's TV deal with NBC is $20 million for the entire season. That is one NASCAR Cup Series broadcast. One. Now, that being said, with the TV ratings, especially this year, this is the worst time for NASCAR's TV ratings to tank, by the way, and they are tanking. that would say to me, because the deals are not signed yet with the TV companies. But when you think about 2014, when all these deals were being made, the Daytona 500 still had 8 million people watching it. A regular cup race would have 3 to 4 to 5 million people watch it. That is not the reality anymore. So if we reduce that $1 billion by the percentage that the TV ratings have fallen, and there are other factors, right? It's not totally dependent on, a completely, it's not totally direct. It's not a direct correlation, but I think there is some correlation. I think there's going to be, let's say this, it's not going to be $1 billion. There's going to be a cut made somewhere. So although NASCAR may be giving the teams a bigger slice of that pie, or willing to give them a bigger slice of that pie is going to be smaller than it was in this TV deal. So what I'm worried about is that there's going to come a point where when that deal, and here's the thing, the deal's not signed yet. Once we know the figure, then all hell's going to break loose. Because let's say the NASCAR teams say, well, NASCAR, you don't want the charters to be around anymore? You buy our charters at market value, or we walk. Well, then the teams are either going to walk or NASCAR is going to pay that. And then you're asking the question, where do they make the cuts in the budget to, keep those teams happy? Where do they cut the budget in NASCAR to pay the teams off what they think they're worth? Is it tracks? Is it people? Is it,
It is a huge cut in the TV budget, which is where a lot of their current revenue does come from. But the other thing you have to remember with NASCAR as well, it's unlike IndyCar, is like the amount of corporate sponsors that are still involved is insane. Mm-hmm. Like the top four, brands that sponsor the series are, Coke, Busch, Xfinity, huge.
Yep.
So I mean, you gotta wonder how much money they make off of other things outside of the TV deal alone.
Yes. No, NASCAR definitely. I mean, like, they're the 800-pound gorilla for a reason. And they just sold Fontana for $500 million, right? So they've got money. But, like, here's the thing. And I guess this is where we'll really get into the talk of the split, is that it doesn't matter how much money you have if you're greedy with it. Like, I don't think NASCAR, because probably NASCAR's sitting in a position where they go, well, we bought the track from one of the team owners, Roger Penske. Why should we give that money back to Roger when we already paid him for Fontana and then we flipped it for $500 million? That's probably where NASCAR is sitting there going, we sold the sponsorship to Coca-Cola and Busch and Xfinity. Like, why should we pay you that money? Because that was our sponsor. That's our sponsor, not yours. You go sell a sponsor. Probably what that would be what I would imagine NASCAR would say. I don't factually know that, but I looking, and especially I wish I'd brought it out. I would highly recommend, if you're a NASCAR fan, this is going to sound weird, you should track down the 1995 Carl Hugness yearbook for the Indianapolis 500, because that is an eye-opener if you read that, because that gives me the best perspective of exactly what in 1995 IndyCar racing felt like. There was a lot of people on the copium. I'll put it that way. There was a lot of people looking at signs or not reading the tea leaves and going, it'll be fine. Or, this IRL series will be around for, 2 seconds and it'll be gone. You have to realize when there's these kind of conflicts with people with this amount of wealth, it rarely ends well. It just rarely does. And the one thing I will say is, could I believe that Roger Penske would be involved in a third split? No. What I can believe is that Michael Jordan's business manager, Pitbull's business manager are looking at this and how other sports run and go, what the hell have we gotten ourselves into? And I think that's where it's coming from. I think it's the new team owners, like you said, who have paid $20 million. I think 2311 paid more than that for the 45 charter.
I thought it was like $13 million. I thought it was Stern reported.
I think they paid way. I could be wrong. I think they paid like way over market value. Whatever market value was at the time they paid for it.
Yeah,
they paid over it. Let's put it that way.
Because to be fair, like, I mean, The other problem is that like it's already been paid. Like
Yes.
like I said, team owners have already paid the market price. I mean, team owners still could. Like they're only worth as much as someone's willing to pay, like you said. And if Dale Jr. really wanted to, he could have spent 23 million by now,
Mhm.
but he's not.
Well, and here's the thing too. Based on my understanding, I watched this great live stream by Brock Beard recently. I would suggest everyone go watch. I think it's called the Slow
I think I
Wednesday
saw that.
stream. It was great. If you have not watched that, you need to watch it. We're required viewing if you're interested in this situation. But one thing Brock brought up was the fact that you know the NASCAR apparently controls whether or not a charter is granted to a team. Like, for example, they yanked Starcom's uh, charter from them to sell to someone else. So let's say, now we are in intense speculation territory here. We are way out in the weeds. Okay, this is total spitballing. Let's say the worst case scenario happens, and the teams say, "Screw you, NASCAR. We're going home." Guess what NASCAR could do? Let me just lay this out for everybody. NASCAR could yank 36 charters, give them to Xfinity teams, and that's your Daytona 500. And that would be literally what happened with Carton IRL, by the way, because if they did, and I cannot believe if Roger Penske would be involved in a third split. Or starting a breakaway series. But if they did that, the exact scenario plays out that what happened to IndyCar racing. All the stars and cars are off doing their own thing, but all the recognizable races will be run and won by guys like Justin Allgaier. So I don't know, man, because
If
I
they
think
ran,
I bet Dale Jr. would stay with NASCAR if that happened. And I think if there was a split, I think the barometer is going to point in the direction of whichever side Dale Jr. picks. That's how I feel about it.
if you they come run Xfinity cars and Cup at that
It
point,
would cut the costs.
would that be a bad thing? I
No,
mean, yes, but
okay,
no.
yes, it would be a bad. Because here's the thing, like I keep almost saying that about this NASCAR deal. If there was a split, like, would it be a bad thing if the team started like doing the races the way we want? Yes, it would. Because here's the thing, you don't undo that when you do it.
Yeah.
IndyCar is still figuring that out. Because like I've said this before about IndyCar, like they got back together in 2008. How many years ago was that at this point? It was longer than the actual split. I think it's 15 years versus a 12-year split. But I've always said this, has 12 years of actual healing actually taken place in those 15 years? I would say no. So once you take that, you can't really put the genie back in the bottle if you do something like this. And I think the NASCAR teams have to be really, really, really careful and think long term here. Because if they don't think long term, they're gonna kill the golden goose for everybody. Everybody. Because like NASCAR still is far and away, like you said, number one in the US, number one with sponsors, consumer based sponsors, which is something that other racing series cannot claim. Um, they have got to really consider their position, I would say, because if they don't, it's going to be a free for all, and who knows what's going to happen.
Sounds like really good time for IndyCar to capitalize by adding, Michigan and all these other oval races to the calendar.
Well, maybe if NASCAR concedes and starts paying all the teams $20 million, they'll have to sell Michigan. Roger will buy it back, and we're going to take it to the top. But
Yeah.
I,
Well,
I don't
could
know,
you
man.
imagine if they actually split? IndyCar keeps putting on races like they did at Texas, and all the corporate sponsors up at NASCAR that kind of feel a little uneasy, just jab. Hey,
Well,
hey,
here's the joke
hey.
here's the joke that I came up with is that IndyCar is a sanctioning body, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's stopping them from sanctioning stock car races? How about the RTA series runs the support races to IndyCar races? because under IndyCar sanction. How do we feel about that?
Yeah. I mean, that is totally out there.
That is out there. I'm just
But
saying. Well, but here's the thing: if they do a breakaway series,
it's gonna be the
somebody's gonna
Cars
have to
Tour.
sanction it. Somebody's gonna have to sanction.
It's gonna be the Cars Tour.
That's Dale Jr. It won't. I don't think that. I don't think. I'm telling you. I don't think Dale Jr. is gonna stray away from NASCAR. Because why would he support the teams that are keeping him out? It's the Michael Andretti situation. Why would Dale Jr. help out the teams that are making it difficult for him to join the Cup Series? That wouldn't make any sense.
Yeah.
He'd just say, "All right, I'll win all the Cup races." That's what he'd say.
So at what point at what point did the red flags go in the air? Did the alarm sing? Because I've thought about this a lot. I'd like a time machine for a lot of reasons. But one would be to tell them to go to CART and say, "Don't do it." Two would be, to kind of go around that time in 1996, 1995. Was it just like kind of like Roger buying the series where he just woke up one day and it was like, newsflash, whoa, hey, did this happen? Or was it like kind of like what's happening in NASCAR now, where it's like months of just like, hey, red flag, hey, red alert, hey, red alert. What are the signs? And
Well,
it kind
if you
of
read,
want to make a freaking YouTube video is like 4 signs that your series is about to split, and it's just like narrated by 1996 Card IRL fans.
well, if you read the text from that time, it's not blatantly obvious that these things are going to end the way that they do. Like, there are websites, and maybe I'll link some of them eventually. Like, I think it's like champcar.com or something. You can read stuff from like 1995, like the fall of 1995. There were still kart teams testing at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway in the fall of 1995 because they were fully expecting, even though they'd announced the US 500, to race at Indianapolis. Like, I don't think we realize how quickly these things happen when they do happen. And I'll tell you the biggest red flag. The biggest red flag, like I said already, is going to be when we hear the number of what the money is from the TV rating or the TV contract. The minute we know how much less NASCAR is getting from that TV deal, like let's say they cut it in half. It's whatever, $500 million per year. Oh boy, I would say that is when everybody should be pressing the panic button, because the blood is in the water at that point, as far as I'm concerned. But I think the red flags are already there. As an open wheel fan, as someone who studies the sport and particularly studies that particular era of the sport, like, man, I just see it. And I cannot, but the only thing that I cannot believe, like you said, Kyle, is that we are right now in the hot tub time machine. We are living this, and there's nothing we can do to stop it.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe at IMS this year, if we see Denny Hamlin, we'll just say no.
I'd be like, Denny, look, man, Denny, just like,
let's take a walk to that museum over there, and let me tell you.
Let's show you the '95 Reynard.
If you want to talk about actions detrimental, Denny, this is it. Don't do it.
That's funny. Yeah, that's a split. Yeah, you're right, Denny. Yeah, Denny. That would be a split. Is the ultimate actions detrimental to stock car racing? That would be, yeah. I don't know, but again, these people just live in a bubble too. That's the problem.
At what point, though, it could all be avoided as well, even with a lower TV deal, if Jim France just said, "Okay, you can have the drivers." Like, when does that happen? Does that happen?
That could happen.
Does the France family save themselves? So it's not like we're all doom over here, where it's like, oh, NASCAR is gonna split. Dear God, this is all bad. Well, we're just saying.
But this is the David Land podcast. It's all bad.
We're just pointing at the signs, people. We're just pointing at the signs, telling you to look at this little thing that happened in the late 90s that ruined my child experience basically my entire life of freaking IndyCar racing. I was born in 2001, damn it, and I didn't get to experience anything but IRL or Champ Car my entire life, thanks to those people a couple of years before I was born that did this bunch of stupid stuff. For those, in the future, NASCAR, don't do it. Don't ruin this.
Yeah,
Don't.
but that's the thing, man. These guys are playing at such a high level, and there are people. Again, like I said, I think the big thing is the new teams. There's new teams coming in. There's being like, the NFL doesn't work this way. I don't know. It's gonna be a hell of a thing when it happens. If it happens, and,
Crazy
and what
part
we'll
is the
see.
charters were a part of the reason the teams joined in the first place, because that they had that golden ticket that they just immediately had guaranteed money that they could
Well,
sell
yeah,
for.
I think anybody that had a brain realized the charters were a bad idea. And in fact, we talk about red flags. First of all, Slap Shoes is way ahead of the curve on this one. He did a video, I think, last year, kind of pointing this out and tapping the sign, so to speak, like, hey, this could happen. Um, but like, I remember the jokes. I think it was around 2017 when they did the charters.
Mhm.
Like everyone was making NASCAR jokes. Like everybody was like, "Oh, it's cart." Like everybody knew that. Like it's like if you're not plugged in, I guess you don't understand that was a bad thing coming. That was not going to end well, and here we are, living La Vida Loca, so to speak. It's gonna be I don't know, man. I think we're gonna be talking about this as things continue to go. Um, but yeah, let's talk briefly about Long Beach. I don't have actually too much to say about Long Beach. I think the only thing I would say is that uh the first two IndyCar races of the season have been absolute bangers. Um and I think Long Beach last year was really good. And I think that Romain Grosjean might get his first IndyCar win. Thoughts?
Those are really good. I think if St. Pete was any indication, I think we're in for a crazy Long Beach. Honestly, I do see the Grosjean part happening. The one thing I just want to say is I've been very pleased with the 3 races we've had so far in the build up and
It's been only 2 races, Kyle.
the build up to both races so far. I mean, the build one in the Long Beach is pretty good too. They just came out with the newest video,
I
the
haven't seen that yet. Is it any good?
the newest ad. Yeah, it's a Rossi one. It's freaking badass. But I mean, I the IndyCar just feels like ever since Texas, at least, feels like definitely got their mojo back, man. I like a lot of the content that they've been producing. I watch that stuff and I'm just like, man, like it feels like we're back in 2018 again. Like, shit.
Oh
We're
man, yeah.
like,
2020. I'll tell you what, I never ever ever like if you'd asked me in 2018, 2019, like, hey, are you nostalgic for this? Or
yeah,
will you ever be nostalgic? I would have been like, nah, hell no.
yeah, same.
But man, yeah, seeing the growth of the sport around that time, man, that was fun. That was fun. The TV show, and that's the other reason I'm a little bit disappointed about missing Long Beach is I'm gonna miss the premiere of the TV show.
Yeah, that's happening soon, isn't it? Man,
It
time
is.
flies.
It is. No, like I said, I told Kyle before the show, like this is when we get this is team no sleep. Of course, he's been no sleep anyway because he's been on the go-kart
Yeah,
trail, but he's just not sleeping, period. David's not
not
gonna
at
be
all.
sleeping for like the next month and 2 months. But yeah, it's exciting. We like this. Otherwise we wouldn't do it. Um hell no God knows why we're doing it. Um as you probably can understand from the podcast and all the problems we've talked about. But I don't know. Speaking of problems, get me in trouble. What you got?
I'm not. Again, I don't think I'm gonna get you in trouble. I had a thought, like a few weeks ago. I have notes on my phone now that because I'm tired of just like forgetting. Um,
Ah,
I just have to ask. I want to bring up. I was thinking about this. I was watching something from the '90s at some point,
mm,
talking about the speeds in Indianapolis,
yes.
and the track record, and some of the drivers talking about how they would feel dizzy almost, feel I just I had a thought. At what point, or do you think are we at this point where we've reached kind of a peak in the human, physical ability to handle around the Indianapolis Speedway at Indianapolis Motor Speedway? Like what how much further do we have, do you think, before we are physically unable to go any faster because of dizziness, because of just G.
It's an interesting question. Um, and we never really got to see that bore out to its logical conclusion because of the split. Ironically enough, um, I think the track record. Because here's the thing, because we don't know, because the Indy 500 or IndyCar technology, though they were not racing at Indianapolis, the fastest these cars ever got was in the year 2000. Though 2001, it was also a development year. They kind of started pegging the cars back a little bit. Gilles de Ferran did a 241 mile per hour lap at Fontana. And that was with a barn door Hanford device on the back of the wing. That car probably could have run 256 miles an hour without it. So I think that the 250, I think a car could run 250 miles an hour around Indianapolis, and I think the human body could probably take it. But you are talking about the potentiality, because here's the thing. I think speed can be achieved safely at Indianapolis. Still, I think the big safety concern I have currently with how the cars make their speed up is that in the 90s, they would scrub 10, 20 miles an hour from corner entry to corner exit just from friction. Now, the difference between a straightaway speed and a corner speed is not very much. I think the safe way to do fast speeds in Indianapolis is to have high straightaway speeds and lower corner speeds. So let's say they do 270 miles an hour on the straight and they have to back off to 220 in the corner or 215 or something like that. I think that would be way safer than running around at 245 for the entire lap. That being said, I think that, and this makes me so sad to say because I got all angy and boomery and Pepe the Frog depressed looking at that 94 home video from a couple of days ago that I posted on Twitter because
We need to talk about that too, by the way.
okay, we can talk about that. I looked at that and I said, this was when technology was being because you have to think cars, the Mercedes pushrod. Now it wasn't running an absolute track record, but they ran. I think Mo did a 230 in practice. The first 230 mile an hour lap turned at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway was in 1992. So that in 1994 they were in year 2 or the third year. Actually, really the second year because 1993 the speeds dropped because they reconfigured the track, took the apron away. So 92 they were running at 230. They stopped for a year in 93 because they had to redevelop the cars to go around the track fast. And then in 1994 they were running 230 miles an hour again. That was the second year anyone in human history had seen Indy cars run 230 miles an hour around the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. We are now in year 30 of the cars running the relatively the same speeds. I wonder, hypothetically, what it would be like if the cars had progressed with the time like they had through the rest of history, where we'd be, how fast we'd be running, what the cars would look like, would drivers be in G suits, what would the safety have to look like to achieve that, both spectators and drivers and cars. And I also wonder about the spectacle of the sport from the perspective of we lost a lot of that technological marvel in the split years with IndyCar racing. But then again, you look at Formula One, and Formula One cars are not nearly as fast as they once ran either. So, but the technology is still there. So I don't know. It's a curious question. I don't know how fast they could run. I will say this, and I hate to say this too because it makes my eye twitch a little bit to say it. But I think maybe in the future, I can't believe I'm about to say this. The the track record for internal combustion engines may be capped at 236.9. That might be it. But for electric cars, for hydrogen cars, we might be talking about track records in a completely different context. I don't
Autonomous
know.
cars.
No.
Oh,
No.
no, there are records to be had, is what I'm
Oh,
saying.
there are. Well, yeah, but they're not going to be racing in the Indianapolis 500.
Oh, no.
I'm talking specifically about the Indianapolis 500 and
I'm
where
talking
it
about
may
the
go.
spirit of the speedway in general.
I almost said you almost got me in trouble. I almost said something that would get me in trouble. So I won't say that. But yeah, no. But I will say something that will get me along the lines of that. There was something like you said, you pointed out on Twitter. There was something about that '94 video about sitting with whoever filmed that in the turn one grandstands inside the track, looking at the beautiful grass all over the place. Car, no huge high fence. Cars that sound good, cars that look good, lots of different cars.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm
man,
just
that was a
thinking
vibe,
about
man.
our
Vibe.
our our casual spot in turn one every year. I'm just thinking like that to what we do today, basically on a normal practice day, chilling with Steve.
Well, let me tell you
Imagine
something.
that. Imagine that in '94 on the
Well,
inside.
this is what haunts. This is literally what keeps me up at night. And if you think I'm joking, I'm not. Uh, I think about that. I think about the Indy car that I want to cover versus the Indy car that I am covering. And I realized that the Indy car I want to cover, I was less than 1 year old for.
Hmm.
And I don't know how to reconcile that because it's
Then
like I wish I could talk about 209 Mercedes and oh, how fast are the Buick's going to go this year? And well, here's Al Senior in a '93 Lola for a crappy team. Is he going to make the field?
yeah,
Um,
man. You,
yeah,
you you watch that video and it's like all the cars sound different too.
yeah,
They
yeah.
all
The
look they
209 push
all
right.
look different.
The only thing I really was disappointed in that video is he didn't shoot the Greenfield engine, which was also a push rod similar, built to the same rules as the Mercedes Ilmor. The only other car that ever was built to that specification. It was a '93 Lola. Michael Greenfield was the driver. They got Johnny Parsons to drive it at '95, but I wish I could have heard that car. There is a video of it warming up on YouTube. I believe Dr. Indy might have posted it, but I've never seen that car actually run on track before. So, but yeah, I mean, like you said, like the Buick sounds different than the Mercedes, and the Cosworth sounds different than all of them. And in fact, even like the exhaust note from a Reynard sounds different than the exhaust note from a Lola, even though they're running the same engine. I'm getting upset. I'm getting upset. Let's talk about super chats. Let's get to the super chats, shall we? Let's see. We actually did get a lot of super chats today, so it's going to take us a little while, but that's good. That's a good problem to have. The first one comes from Irvin, who says, "Did you hear about Atlantic City turning Bader Field into a track with condos? From reading articles, it looks like could be a private track like Thermal. Why do I feel like IndyCar could go there as well?" So yeah, I've heard about the Atlantic City track. They've described it as a Formula One track, which I think is just stupid people language for a race car track. Um, I think where racing is going, not racing necessarily, but I think where motorsport is going to live as things continue is on those private club tracks. I think a lot of rich people enjoy the fact that they don't have to put up with the public and can just run their cars whenever they want. I mean, and again, my experience at the Thermal Club, it's the most amazing. Like it is the coolest experience. Like I said, it's like Disney. It's like Disneyland or Mayberry for racing. It is so cool. But it is a very high cost to get into it and be a part of it. So But yeah, I mean, like Atlantic City, like that's close enough to New York City where certainly you could see a lot of people taking advantage of that who have the means to do it. I would be concerned about the future of New Jersey Motorsports Park, which is around there, because that is a public track, though it is closer to a club track. I don't know. No.
Who cares about
Millville being Millville, baby. Taurus has a couple of super chats. I think some of everyone's favorite golfers didn't make the final round. A franchise system would help the fans see their stars every time. Boo.
man?
I was talking about the Masters. Do you like locked in spots, the Masters new golf fan, Kyle?
No.
All right.
I don't like locked in spots anything. Give me bumping or give me death. I'm gonna put that on a t-shirt. Nobody take that.
No, let's honestly make that shirt for May and we'll just wear it.
Yeah.
Screw it. Taurus also says, was I the only one who didn't look back fondly on the 2017 race? I saw it as proof that the 2016-27 repave was going to be a problem for a long time. Are you talking? I think he's talking about the Indy 500.
Sure it's not Texas?
Oh, yes, Texas. Yeah, no, I definitely crapped on that Texas race. I thought it was terrible.
That was terrible because that was also the same race. Everybody remembers the Hinchcliffe. I think that's adorable quote in all the nonsense. But I remember from that night was pretty sure that was the night that Newgarden and the other Penske cars were having issues because they were running their dampers so hard as they always do, and they were having tire issues. And because there were two cars in the field that were on the same team having tire issues, we had a caution every 20 laps.
Yep. And guess what that did? Because of the stupid wave around rule that they still haven't gotten rid of, even though Tony Kanaan completely proved why that was a bad idea. They gave Tony Kanaan a 5-lap penalty for crashing the entire field. And because of that dumbass wave around rule, he got every single one of those laps back and almost won the race. Are you kidding me? And they're still doing it. I'm sorry. That rule, I don't understand why they do that. Open the pits once, let everyone pit, and if you're ahead of the leader the lap before you go green, wave them around. But don't give them a free pit stop. Thank you. Give them a lap or a pit stop, not both of them. Thank you. Thank you. This has been my TED Talk. Damn, I'm mad about that. I don't like that. That's one thing that will get me steamed is that dumb rule. I don't like it. And you can talk about entertainment till you're blue in the face. I don't care. A bunch of cars on the lead lap does not mean anything if they can't compete with the cars that lapped them in the first place. For those listeners, I just knocked my IMSA fan off the desk because I'm so mad. Ben Liebig for €5 says the one thing I couldn't stop asking myself throughout the entire Texas race was, why don't we have more of this? I also asked that question. I was sitting there going, why aren't we at Michigan? Right? Why is this package not racing at Michigan? Was my exact thought.
Yeah, that was my biggest thought. Was like, it was amazing, but like, damn, this is Texas. I don't like this track.
Well, it was more like, damn, this is the only time. Like, we're not going to see this again for an entire year. Literally a year. We're not going to see a show like that again. And that was disappointing. That was a little disappointing. Taurus has a couple more. He says, the proof that not enough people watch IMS and Daytona is the debate that there are no high-speed trains in the USA. Well, I guess that's true. I would take a train over a plane if I had the option at this point. I'm tired of planes, to be quite honest. Taurus also says splitting the series is the big one NASCAR can put for the cameras. Well, I'll tell you what, I've always been curious about what the split would have looked like in the social media era. We might damn well get to see that experiment play out. Venny the D says, Texas was my first ever in-person IndyCar race. I loved it, and I need to see another in-person once again. Hey, you know what? Come out to the Indy 500. It won't be exactly the same show, but it's like, a million times a spectacle. But I'm glad you came out, Vinny. You're one of the people that I will not yell at for the next 365 days to buy a damn Texas ticket. And buy a Milwaukee ticket if they actually do go back there. For the love of God, if we don't fit, If they bring back Milwaukee and we don't fill that freaking place up, I have no faith in humanity anymore. If we complain about it for that, and I'll tell you what, we're going yard on Milwaukee, Kyle. We're bringing out the big guns. We're treating that like the Indy 500. We are going to promote the hell out of that race if it comes back. I'll tell you what, we're gonna take.
Sounds like what I said after Gateway last year. Like we need to fill that freaking place up.
Right. Well, yeah.
How are
Gateway
we?
too.
The same thing about Texas. That really grinds my gears. And I can't really say much because I haven't been able to make it out to Texas. But like, geez, guys, like we complain about not having enough ovals, but then look at the crowd in Texas. It's like, geez, bro.
Well, but that's I don't blame the fans for not supporting Texas.
It is farther away from the Midwest region where most of us are. To be fair.
Well, but the big,
if it was Michigan, I'd see a different story. But
it wasn't a good enough race, though. You can't expect people to come to a crappy race. You can't, and you can't expect people to take your promise of it'll be better this year, like until you prove it. But they proved it. Here's the thing: IndyCar proved it. We have to reward them for doing the right things. Period. Reward them for doing the right things and punish them for doing the wrong things. That's how you're going to improve the sport. That's how I feel about it. And in the case of Texas, they got it absolutely right. And therefore, well, hold on. Let me just say this, everybody. The cars are changing for next year. They're getting more weight, maybe a slightly different body kit. The weight distribution will be different. They may not race exactly the same. And I don't mean, but still buy a ticket to Texas, but they will change a little bit next year. Milton says, and that's the problem with modern racing, by the way, is people set expectations because the cars never change. Don't set expectations. Just show up to races. Buy a ticket. Enjoy product. Milton says, NASCAR split. Huh. No wonder NASCAR has broken up Diamond this year. Oh, you're talking about the 75th logo. That's terrible. Yikes. I'll say this. I remember I was actually alive and conscious in 1998. Unfortunately, Kyle, you were not. And I can say that the 50th anniversary for NASCAR was like, I mean, it was a multimedia blitz. They went all out for that. You couldn't throw a rock in a Walmart without hitting something with the NASCAR logo on it. It was unbelievable.
You know how I know that?
Unbelievable time.
You know how I know that? Even though I wasn't in existence? Guess.
Because you've gone to diecast stores before and seen how many freaking things have that logo on it.
Bingo. Literally. How many different? Because the other thing too is around that time, because it is different, right? Because there were like 5 different diecast manufacturers back then, so all 5 of them had to make their own special way of the 50th anniversary. So there's like a freaking billion 50th anniversary NASCAR diecast and trinkets out there of everything you can imagine, because there were literally a billion different companies making NASCAR merchandise, where now we have like 2.
You missed out at Texas. There was in the Buc-ee's, there was this amazing diecast store diecast tent
in the parking lot of Buc-ee's.
Yeah. I got a 2002 Ricky Rudd car and I think a 2006 Casey Mears car there. And I could have bought like what? Oh God, who's the JD McDuffie? I could have bought a JD McDuffie 2-pack of like a hauler and like 2 of his cars. I mean, yeah, you missed out. You could have gone to Buc-ee's and then walked and got diecast.
Speaking of diecast, I need you to take a look at that red Indy car on your desk. And I need you to do the thing.
I was wondering if you're going to notice that. Yeah. What is this? What is this? What is this? What could that be? For those of you listening, it says Bradley on it. It's pretty dusty. I need to dust it, but it says Bradley. It's a Reynard. It's number 12. And the driver's Buzz Calkins. And if you can tell me why that's significant and perhaps relevant to some of the discussion today, you get a cookie. I'll steal you a media center cookie at Indianapolis.
Where did you buy that? Where did you buy that diecast?
I bought that at Gearheads in Indianapolis. Our friend Bob runs Gearheads. We love Bob. He is trying to sell the place, though he has not done it yet. So everybody go over there.
From Bob before
go buy stuff from Bob and then tell him not to sell the place, because that's what I always do. But I walked around the PRI show in I think 2019 and just kept handing people this car and said, "Do you want to get buzzed?" And I buzzed people. Two more, at least two more super chats on my screen. Let me refresh it here real quick. Yes, two more super chats to go. Austin says, to me, Grosjean is crash or win this year. He's been crash or win every year, as far as I can tell. That is how Romain Grosjean races.
Well, this year he's just been crash.
That's true, but he's been fast. I think
fast and crash.
Fast and crash. That's exciting.
Put that on a t-shirt, or don't.
Titus says, did you go to the Acura test at Indy? No, I did not. Unfortunately, I got sick after Texas. So I was like running a fever and coughing and sneezing and doing other things. But I did hear it because I live close enough.
You didn't just peek your head out of the bridge?
Oh, I sure did. I did. I knew exactly what was running. I mean, it's not hard to figure out. It's like, oh, that's the Acura. Yeah, we're looking forward to IMSA running at Indy. I think that's going to be fun. It's the Indy road course is the Indy road course, and I have lots of thoughts about that. Maybe we'll talk about a couple of streams from now, but it'll be fun to have IMSA there. I think it'll be fun to have IMSA there. All right, I guess I'll say this or bring this up, Kyle. I guess I'll give you the final word. What's your kind of thought? Oh, wait, I know what your thought did. Now, I should not ask you about this, but I'm going to. We're going to get Kyle in trouble. How do you feel about IMSA going to Indy?
Oh, yeah, because of the thing. Because of the place that they left. Is that what you're going for?
That might be what's getting
is that
you
what you're
in
trying
trouble?
To say? Huh? Trying to say that my track's not good enough?
I think that's exactly what IMSA said, but I'm not entirely sure.
Listen. There might be bees. I'm talking about Mid Ohio, by the way. So
there were bees where was that? Texas?
I know there's bees in the garages. Okay. I know the garages are like falling apart. I know they don't mow the grass. I know your car gets stuck in the parking lot every time it rains. I know the media center's small, but
that is a complaint of mine.
Boy, is it homie, I tell you. But I know it needs a repave. But it's an all-time classic track, okay? It is literally called Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course. And they don't host a sports car race. Okay? Okay? Now, okay. You can go to the IMS road course. They have an F1 media center. They have F1 garages. Oh man,
we're gonna have good ranchers.
There's a pagoda. But when you're, watching a race on a track that is completely flat, no elevation changes. My track has elevation changes. Can you say that? No, you can't. All right. Then so be it.
I would just like to say the opinions of the co-host and not necessarily reflect the David Land YouTube channel or any of its affiliates.
David, how do you feel about the IMS road course?
I'd take a jackhammer to that chicane and turn. Wait, what? Who said that? I love the IMS road course. What are you talking about?
Oh, so the opinions of the co's do reflect.
Well, I selfishly, I do like the idea of an IMSA race happening 5 minutes from my house, but
yeah, I like the idea of having an IMSA race 15 minutes from my house, but I can't have that. But you can certainly have your race. Congratulations.
Listen, nobody. If there's anything that we know, it's that nobody wins on the IMS road course. Just nobody does.
Listen, you wanted this. I hope I
didn't want it. All I did was break the news.
You wanted to ask me the question. I hope I gave you the rant that you so thrived.
It was a great rant. No, it was a great rant, and I'm sure we have many rants to come. Oh boy. Yeah. So I think this was a fun episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We will have one next week because boy, oh boy, is it about to get busy. Lots of Indy cars. We got Silver Crowns. We're going to be going to hopefully cover a Silver Crown race, the Hoosier 100 at the Indianapolis Raceway Park. I imagine that's going to be a bit of a discussion in next week's podcast. We'll have a breakdown of Long Beach, anything else that's happening with NASCAR. Do you know what else we did not talk about? And that says something to how much or how little we care about it. Dirt Bristol, the only thing that perhaps is more mid than the IMS road course. Thank you guys, and we'll see you in the next podcast.